Hello everyone. Let's talk a little about Hawthorne Studies. Immediately after Industrial Revolution, when scientific management theory was in vogue, a lot of companies started implementing the principles given by scientific management theory, which actually made people feel as if they were some kind of a cog in the machine. And hence, many companies, many organizations, or you can say even factories, saw a huge decline in productivity and rise in absenteeism and turnover. When I say turnover, I mean turnover of employees. So a lot of people started leaving jobs. They were not interested in continuing their work, and obviously the productivity declined. Hence, a plant in the Western Electric Company, when it saw a huge downfall, it actually approached Elton Mayo and his team somewhere in 1920s. These were the researchers at Harvard, and these researchers were approached so that they can find out the reason for this kind of a trend, that is decreasing productivity and increasing absenteeism and turnover of employees, and also suggest some kind of a solution. So the team reached the Hawthorne plant of this company and conducted a small experiment. Now, this experiment continued for some weeks, and during this experiment, the researchers divided the workers of that plant into two groups. One group was called the control group, and the other group was called the experimental group. Now, the workers were randomly divided into these two groups. I mean, a person was given either the control group or the experimental group, but there was no specific reason. I mean, random distribution of people between these two groups. The purpose was that if you distribute employees randomly, then all the characteristics of the employees get distributed randomly between these two groups. Now, once this was done, the control group was allowed to carry on their work as they usually do. And the changes were made in the working environment of the experimental group. This is generally how you will find the experiments are conducted in the field of psychology. So the objective was to understand if the environment, or rather the ambience where the people work, has any impact upon the productivity. So the control group was left kind of untouched, in the sense that they continued working the way they were used to. The interaction between the workers and managers remained as it was. While in the experimental group, certain changes were made, and after every single change, the productivity was measured. Now, changes were something like increasing or decreasing the intensity of light. Now, this was a plant where wiring was being done. So that means the workers had to use light. And when the light decreases, the intensity of the light decreases, then obviously they had to strain their eyes. So sometimes the light would be increased, sometimes decreased. Or you can think of other changes also. For example, sometimes the ventilation would increase, sometimes it would decrease. Sometimes the rest intervals, the breaks, for example, you can think of the lunch break or some kind of a tea break. that was increased or decreased. Increase in the sense the time duration would increase. For example, just hypothetically, you can think that someday the rest interval or the lunch break was 2 hours and some days it was just 15 minutes. So the lunch break and all this also increased or decreased. And whenever such changes were made, every time the impact on the productivity was noted. How much was the productivity when the lunch break was 15 minutes and how much was the productivity when the lunch break was, let's say, 2 hours. On the other hand, there was no change, as I said, in the control groups working and their productivity was also noted. So what happened was that the productivity of control group remained as it was before the experiment started. Whereas in the case of experimental group, it was found that the productivity went on increasing, irrespective of the changes made by the researchers. However, it seems to be kind of counterintuitive. Everybody would guess that the employees, when they are taking longer intervals, they are more rested and would work more. When they are taking smaller breaks, they are less rested, they are tired. That may affect their output. But no such thing happened. In fact, talking about light, when the intensity was light, when the light was sufficient enough, people would expect that the output would be more. And when the light is dim, they will not be able to work, and hence it will be the productivity would be less. But obviously, this did not happen. And the manager was going around talking to people during the time of the experiment and requesting them their inputs about how things can be changed, or just having a little interactions with the workers. That was all what was done, and the productivity kept on increasing. Now there was no obvious or rational reason behind it, so the researchers were actually wondering why this is happening. That in spite of difficult situations, the employees are working harder, they are giving better results. So the researchers finally explained this with a reason. They said that possibly because these people who are in the experimental group, they feel that they are the center of attention. They see themselves as important part of that experiment, and hence they are overlooking any kind of inconvenience and giving their best to the output. Hence, it was kind of enlightening that people, when they feel important, they can go beyond what they would otherwise go. So that is why this experiment is known as Hawthorne Studies, or an illuminating experiment, because this was a turning point in management literature. Before Hawthorne Studies, not much attention was paid to people. A lot of attention would be paid on the machinery, but it was not felt as if people would make much of a difference. And that is why this Hawthorne Studies is seen as a very important point in management thought. So let's understand what were the significant findings. First of all, this experiment brought the people aspect of organization into focus. That was an important point, and that is where we can also see that it is the beginning of people management or personnel management, or as we know it now, human resource management. And even you can take it as the starting point of organizational behavior as a field of study. So behaviors were studied after that. Another significant finding was that man is not only an economic man. In case of scientific management theory, F.W. Taylor had proposed that if you provide differential piece wage rate system, then people will work harder to earn more. But it was not the case. Hawthorne study proved that man is beyond being an economic man. Man is not always motivated by money. And similarly, it was also seen that behaviors of people have a social and psychological premise. You cannot always see that people are cool, coldly calculating the benefits or the returns, or they are always making rational choices. Many times they make a choice which is not that rational. So, what they work on is the social premise, the psychological premise, the emotions, the feelings, the feeling of being a member of the group, which is important for them. And that is where it was also seen that informal groups of employees exist within that formal structure of the organization. Every organization has a formal structure, and people are divided into departments or some kind of a project group or something. But more than that, what is important is that friendship, the friendship group which may become. And people give it a lot of importance. They give a lot of importance to the opinions of their friends, even at the workplace. Whether what they do will be liked or disliked by their group, that is important. So these informal groups exist and have an impact upon the productivity. That was also an important finding of this experiment. Then communication, because in the experimental group, the manager kept in constant contact with the workers, would go around talking with them, and that actually improved the morale of the worker. Earlier, it was not the case. Earlier, it was mostly about hire and fire. In terms of scientific management theory, they were applying everything as if it is a scientific principle. That's all. But the human touch was missing, which was brought about in Hawthorne Studies. And lastly, the way the manager dealt with people made a lot of difference, because of which the people continued to put in their best. When the manager asked the feedback from the workers, it wasn't exactly implemented, but the employees felt good when they were asked for it. Hence, it is important that the leader plays such a role which involves all the people into the task. And then only people feel connected to the work they are doing. And thus, they always give it their best. So we can see that the Hawthorne studies actually turned to be an important point in management literature, which underlined the importance of people in the organization. Thank you.